We are now moving on to the second hour, where we will be considering how you might monetize creativity, very much a theme of our conference, and indeed our center. And a keynote speaker in this hour is Alice Hu Wagner. She is Managing Director of London and Partners and formerly Strategy, Economics and Business Development at the British Bank. Alice, I saw you. Yes, I can see you in the top right of my screen. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will try and stick to time as well. I really want to build on a lot of the comments from Professor Finkelstein, from Jenny just now as well. When we talk about creativity, I think we should think about sort of lateral collaborative thinking. So, in terms of the monetizing side, I thought it might be useful to sort of break this down into a what and a how. So, for example, the question about what is it that you are monetizing, and as both Professor Finkelstein and others have brought up, the critical thing is to have clarity around the problem that you're solving and who you're solving, who has that problem, right? Technical terms, an addressable market, but really in plain English, it's what problem are you solving for whom? And so, for example, that can be actually relatively fluid over time. So I'm going to use examples throughout because I think they bring sort of concreteness to it. So, for example, you have this. I'm wearing a Fitbit. These fitness trackers, right? Fitness trackers are originally about data, personal data, exercise, and health. But what people have found, and this is where the interaction with the arts and humanities comes in, is that the data actually, for example, there's a fitness tracker called Whoop, and it actually helps address isolation and anxiety. Now, in terms of addressable market, particularly for men, so 77% of UK men, in a survey in 2015, suffer from anxiety and depression, and most of it goes undiagnosed, and it's not a safe place to go. But if you bring a fitness tracker in and it's just about exercise and data, then what you've done is you've created a fun and safe way for men to actually find and address the need that they have. And that's both a fairly significant market, but it's also a slightly different problem that you're trying to solve. And to solve it, what you need is not just the technical expertise that we talked about, but also the interaction with software behavioral aspects of it. So design, psychology, even economics sort of go into that. Now, the second thing, though, is beyond the addressable market. The second thing is sort of how are you going to be addressing this? If you also need to find a problem that people are willing to pay for, right? And this is the critical thing about monetization. And that not only are they willing to pay for it, but you find a way in which they pay for it in a way, a business model, a revenue model, as it were, that is satisfactory to them. And that may not always be sort of completely straightforward as well. So I've just talked about a male sort of application for equality. I'm now going to talk about a female application. So menstrual tracking, right? This is a really common sort of bit of basic sort of tracking calendar data. You see it in the Fitbit. It's been built into Apple. They're dedicated sort of health tech things. It's sometimes is a big deal. But actually, one of the more interesting ways and successful ways to monetize this is something called an app called Hormone Horoscope. So basically, what we've done is you've taken sort of detailed medical, research about, how do the various hormones vary over each individual day, and they've made it into a bit of fun entertainment called a horoscope. So you check in daily, right? But it's also because the market has been, which in this case is women of childbearing ages, mostly on the younger end, have a habit of paying a relatively small amount for a regular horoscope. Now, we can be academics and be sort of like, oh, snooty, it's just a horoscope. But the truth is that is something that your addressable market is comfortable with, and that's a business model innovation. You're taking something where the underlying science is actually pretty open source, but by being creative about how you're monetizing it, you actually create something that is distinct. Yeah. And then you've got the how and the what. And then, of course, the third and probably most important point of this is that you have to be open to pivot, right? There is something to be said for keeping in mind that people, when you're talking about a need, the need can also be a want. People will often pay more for entertainment and fun than they will for essential needs. It's less commodifiable, right? And you have to compare it to the next best alternative that they have. My favorite story on this that happens to intersect AI and academics is there was a company that came out of the Oxford Zoology Department. And it was originally a bit of animal imaging of exotic animals for veterinarians, like basically in zoos, right? And so the whole idea was particularly good 3D sort of imaging, medical veterinary imaging of exotic animals. That application did not take off, but almost by accident, I mean, not entirely, but they pivoted and they realized that this imaging is actually very valuable to special effects companies working in London with Hollywood movies, particularly those that need to sort of do imaging for animals that don't actually exist, right? And then that just took off because that application, the next best alternative to that is massive labor-intensive drawings, right? And that imaging is a lot more useful and has much more application, in the special effects world than it does, for entertainment purposes, rather than for serious zoological institutions around the world, which is a very small niche market that doesn't have a lot of margins to it. So, so that's one thing about, I'm not sure this would have come across if you had kept it strictly to, linear thinking. You have to think laterally about it. Another example is immersive VR, virtual reality, right? So, and this is where it goes the other way around. Like people think that the application is fun when the actual better application is actually a more serious one. So, everyone's seen the whole Matrix, like, you put on, Google Docs, immersive sort of video gaming, right? Immersive video gaming hasn't actually really taken off. The adoption rates are not there because actually normal, 2D sort of, which is very cheap, very common sort of gaming, actually provides a very good experience today. And the additional benefit of the immersive isn't enough that people are willing to pay for it, right? However, what we found is in the financial services sector, immersive virtual reality is quite useful for doing bank staff training for mandatory training, right? Basically, you use it as role play for tricky customer service applications. And the next best alternative is instead of having a human being run through umpteen times the same role play, you're basically creating an artificial reality where somebody can be trained and not bore the heck out of a human being who's very expensive to go through, okay, how would I have this difficult conversation with a customer? And guess what? It's regulatorily required. Everyone has to do certain hours of it. It's the next best alternative to this, if you think about it, is like airplane pilots. Where flying time's really expensive. And so you create 3D immersive sort of flight simulators, right? Because the alternative is so much more expensive. Yeah, the alternative to gaming is really cheap. So that's not great for monetizing. The next best alternative for training is very expensive, and therefore your monetization works much better. Now, some of this is just lateral thinking, but sometimes it's a bit of luck and serendipity, as we just heard about. But I thought, as a challenge to everybody on this call, I would put those examples out to you and see what you make of it. Neil, back to you.
Thank you very much. Perfectly timed, almost slightly under. You've given us extra 30 seconds, so thank you very much, Alice. So the good news is Alice will be returning to us in about 30 minutes to moderate the end of our discussion, and there'll be an opportunity for answering audience questions to her and to others. And as I've said before, if people are new, post your questions or comments in the chat room, and they'll be moderated, and we will collect them to ask questions on the 45 past the hour. I'm now delighted to introduce the first of our next three speakers. The first speaker is Ioannis Agios. Ioannis is an academic who has researched and developed text-speech systems used by Google before setting up his own company, Altered, which uses AI to synthesize many different versions of a natural speaking voice. My notes tell me he is a gamekeeper turned poacher, and I'm very keen to hear more about that and why that metaphor was used. Ioannis, I believe I saw you earlier.
Do you hear me?
We can hear you, thank you.
Perfect, pleased to meet you. So I can't talk a lot about creativity because I'm not an artist, but I can talk about innovation. So the part of creativity that is innovation, I can talk about that. So I'm going to talk about innovation, particularly in deep tech, because that's what my bread and butter is. 1 second to arrange the windows here and there. Basically, I'm going to talk about monetizing innovation in deep tech, right? Because that's basically what I do. Typically, the monetization of creativity in deep tech is made by the creation of a company. The company is a vehicle of the human resources, the capital resources, and the intellectual property the company creates. But you need a vehicle to wrap around all the technology that you can make so that you can actually get the most out of it. There are other ways to do it as well, but not as fruitful as building it around the company. And once you go to the point of building a company, one of the fundamental choices that one has to make is that you need to know what the company would sell. It's pretty much what was discussed right before. Would it be a product? Would it be a service? Or would it simply be the technology and the team? So you can set either of these three: the services, the products, or the basically the team and the technology. So for the services, it's very easy to kickstart. It's like becoming a subcontractor on steroids in a way. And it's easy to find customers, much easier than anything else, but it's harder to make it scalable and defensible in the long run. So basically, you may be trapped into becoming a mid-sized subcontractor, which is a bit of a nice trap to be, but also you will never grow up to become, for example, a decacorn or something really, really big. Products, on the other hand, are far more risky. It's very easy to burn money just building a product that no one wants. And they're also much harder to kickstart because you need some initial investment to do the product development. But once you do that, if you do it right, it can be scalable and it can be defensible at the same time, and the sky's the limit totally. So it is, if you want to build a very big company, you have to go for products anyway. Acqui-hires is another third, let's say, variant that came the past decade, let's say. Basically, you don't need a business plan, you don't need marketing, you don't need even revenue generation. All you need is the capacity of building a technology and getting a team to do it. And this capacity is being sold pretty expensively, but at the same time, because you're not having your own business plan, you're not having an access to the market, you may not get a very high valuation. Once you're in academia, you are in a pretty advantageous position for acqui-hiring. There has been years of money printing that made capital cheap. That wasn't the case before. There's a shortage of high-tech skills that force companies to seek alternative ways to hire. And there's an ongoing deep learning revolution that brings academic innovation skills to the spotlight. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the salaries of mathematicians were historically never as high, with the possible exception of the era of catapults or whatever. And the political pressure towards big tech actually pushes them to do acquisitions in UK for PR reasons. So all these things work very, very nicely together to get people from academia to do acqui-hire oriented companies. And academia has a good position there because of the know-how, the access to human capital, and perhaps reputational reasons. If you go the other way, however, you don't want to do acqui-hire, you want to build your own product. This is where the interesting game starts, because it is very hard to find a product market fit. So it's very hard to find a product that's desirable by many people. And a startup, in fact, can be seen as an experiment made upon the market, seeking a product market fit. The startup queries the market and the market responds. The response is used to find the product and an associated business model. This is basically an experiment made on the top of the market. And once you realize that, you can address the challenges that are coming along this product design phase. In fact, there's no such thing as a blue sky development of a product. A product, or at least a successful product, is the result of an iterative process that incorporates market feedback into the product itself. And some of you may have observed that this process has parallels to the scientific method. So I think that once we draw these parallels, I would like to make the point that academics are pretty much, people from academia are well positioned to address a product design phase as long, or entrepreneurship, as long as they realize that there are parallels between the scientific method and the business method with respect to the product design. So in science, the scientist makes fallible hypotheses about nature and validates or disvalidates the hypothesis according to the results of some experiment. In startups, the entrepreneur makes fallible hypotheses about the market and validates or disvalidates this hypothesis according to some market response, which can be taken in any form of way, right? You don't have to do it. There's no one way of doing that. And therefore, the mental tool set of a scientist can be reutilized basically in a business setup. In science, for example, the justification of a theory, proposition, conjecture, hypothesis stems out of an experiment. The final groundor of truth is the experiment in nature. In business, the justification of a product comes out of the market itself. Thus, an academic can deal with this as long as you do a product design process that is based on fallible hypotheses. In other words, you can treat the market as a terra incognita, where you seek to understand via experiments made upon it. You are probing the market. And this iterative process leads to a product market fit if you do all the steps right. And you can be pretty thorough on that. So I think that if you follow this perspective, you realize that academics can actually collaborate with business people to build what we call typically the techie plus biz duets, which were quite common, in US, Harvard, MIT duets, built numerous companies. And I've seen this working, and I think that the basis of all this successful collaboration between basically business people and techies, whatever, were based upon the realization that they are treating the market as a terra incognita. And that's pretty much, I think, finishes that. I hope I was, I'm open for questions, but I can talk more if you want about it.
You have 40 seconds, Ioannis, if you wish to use that now. Yes.
So, okay, let's then do the whole cycle. So in this 40 seconds, I'll say, you start with an idea, right? This idea basically is a model, comes out of a model it comes out of an analysis process, which is based on a model that you are developing about how the world works and your intuition, your prior knowledge and everything. According to this, say, I believe, for example, that people will buy that product, right? And then you're going to people who would buy that product. You're saying, do you like to buy that? And the people may say no. And then you have to go back and say, hey, actually, I have to get this new type of knowledge into my model. When my model is actually my mental construction, my perspective on the world and the market, into so that I can improve it and I can make a modification. Then you make the modification then to the product, and you're going back to people and say, would you buy that product? And then people may say, yes. I'm done. Now I'm using my time, hopefully.
Yeah, very efficiently, Ioannis. Thank you. It comes back to themes of prototyping and circular development that we heard earlier. Fantastic. So if you have questions for Ioannis or comments on what he's written, as I said, please put them in the chat and we will be addressing them after the next two talks in the panel discussion. So our next speaker is Maria Diaz, who is head of fellowship at Faculty, an applied AI company that helps organizations worldwide to adopt AI into their business. Maria runs the company fellowship program that transforms PhD and postdoctoral talent into the best commercial data scientists. So certainly someone I should be getting to know. Maria.
Right. Let me try that again. I thought I was sharing. Can you see my screen?
There we go. I can. Afternoon. Yes. Thank you.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry I'm in this obscure setting, but it's the only available space in our office today. I understand we've got a mixed audience of academics and people in business, so I think this is really relevant for you both. So if we think, like most people don't think that data science and AI is really a creative career. Everybody thinks it's all about numbers, and many of us thought it was black magic. If, for example, you have skills that they are like around coding, and also you are a creative person, you can definitely combine your academic background plus some coding and transform yourself into a career in data science. On the other side, for most businesses, solving business problems sometimes require a lot of creativity as well, as I'm sure you are all aware. If you've got some data and you want to use some advanced techniques using AI, you can definitely activate some fantastic techniques, and through those somehow find that hidden value for your business. So as Neil just mentioned, my name is Maria and I had the fellowship at Faculty. And Faculty is an organization that tries to make AI real for many companies that we work with. We deliver about 400 projects in 13 different countries and 23 sectors. But we design accelerator programs to help with strategy, software, and skills that are, absolutely critical to deliver AI and make it real for organizations. From clarifying your AI roadmap to the software to embed AI technology into your businesses, and also all the skills that are required throughout all the organization. But today I'm here to talk to you about how to transform these fantastic academics into commercial data scientists and place them in organizations like the ones that you are coming from. So the fellowship is a program that transforms the best STEM academics into commercial data scientists, as I mentioned. We've been running it for 7 years. We are actually on the 20th program, week 2 out of 5. And we put 335 fantastic academics and place them in more than 200 different companies. And it's a highly selective 8-week program that combines technical and soft skills, as well as the experience of doing real work with an organization. And on the flip side, the organizations are able to try before they hire, and also the projects that these guys deliver while they are in the program, in many cases, they bring a lot of value, and in some cases, a lot of money. So businesses participate because they want the best data scientists, or because they want to create that excitement in their organization, and they develop a proof of concept where AI can help their business. And academics, of course, partake because they want to run away from academia, and with our 98% hiring success, and as well as preparing them for working in a business environment, regardless of their role in there. So for the program, we would get about 5 to 10% of UK maths and science PhD. They apply to our program. And about 1 in 10 makes it on, so it's highly selective. And these are some of the backgrounds and examples of the last fellows that have been selected in Partake. So as you can see, from economics to medical engineering, but obviously the most common backgrounds are physics and maths. And from the universities, we go from Cambridge to Harvard to Oxford to Imperial, UCL, and many other universities like Lancaster, Manchester, Bristol, etc. So great talent, creative people live everywhere and study everywhere. And these people are not only great when they leave academia, but they also carry on, developing. Our alumni is now leading great teams in leading organizations across Europe. So if we think about the ingredients, and I think you all touch somehow, any modern data scientist or any person living in academia not only has to be solid in terms of the maths and the technical capabilities, but also on understanding how a business works, as well as their ability to communicate effectively. And in terms of the curriculum that we provide these guys, is not only their touching on all the technical techniques that they can use, but also all the things that are super important, like as tactical as how to project manage a data science project, to the law around GDPR, managing risk, and many communication skills, like, for example, presentations and active listening, and of course, stakeholder management. And we dedicate a ton of hours of these guys, not only on the teaching, but as well on the mentoring, because every bit of wisdom that we can provide them, they will be able to apply for the future. So you'll be probably wondering, are all the businesses creative equally? So in terms of corporate organizations, they feedback that actually the program is very beneficial for them, because due to their brand, they attract a lot of applications. And in so many cases, they're not so relevant for the role that they are advertising for. And on the flip side, startups and public services, sometimes they struggle to get good applications because of the lack of knowledge about what they do. So through the program, at least, fellows can be quite acquainted with them and then stay on and, develop a career and stay for many years to come. So in terms of the projects and the impact, what can these wonderful people achieve, during the program? I've got a few examples. I hope I'm doing okay with time. So for example, GFA optimized the web search for a high street retailer. And only with that little change, it meant that on the first year, she found 20 million just lying around for the organization. On the flip side, we had Will that helped the London Fire Brigade and develop an algorithm that read 37,000 reports and extracted the cause of fire out of those, saving obviously many hours, like 2,000 hours for for a person to read those and analyze. So highly effective. Cool. And in terms of, for example, for an airline, Simon developed a pricing simulator that mimic the live interaction between passengers' choices and simple revenue management systems. And therefore, this simulation allowed to understand how, the optimum pricing rules without having any risk for the organization or for the customers that they were buying tickets. Another example would be, for an energy provider, many emails go to the same inbox, and imagine having to select them and send them to the right department to deal with. By automating this, obviously the customer services team spend less hours doing, mechanical tactical work, and obviously customers were addressed their inquiries much quicker. And you would think that construction organizations and construction companies, they don't use AI very effectively. But for example, Michael was able to work and created a tool to automate internal reporting as well as identifying delays. Imagine in a construction site, having a delay is millions of pounds for the organization involved. And like these, 330 more examples I can share. So some parting thoughts from my side. Creativity comes from all different corners of data science and AI, not only for the practitioners and the people that transition and do that, but also for the businesses that they wish to lead on how to find the best talent and how to use the data to monetize creativity. And with that, I would like to say thank you. I'll stick around for later. So thanks so much, Neil.
Oh, thank you, Maria. That's fascinating. I only recently became aware of faculty, and certainly I would welcome people from both academia and from practice, their thoughts on this approach to knowledge exchange, which is very much about investing in the person and moving away from the concept of the project that Anthony Finkelstein was talking about earlier. So yes, please do post your questions and comments in the chat. The last talk in this session on monetizing creativity is coming to us from New York. We have Geo Martin, who is a serial tech entrepreneur with more than 3 decades of experience in media and music. Currently, Geo is busy with his startup, GR1, platform designed, sorry, GR1, I'm talking about WR1, I apologize, Geo, a platform designed to make sure that creatives take more control of their income streams. And I shall say that again, WR1. Geo, the floor is yours just to stress the name of the product.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here is morning in New York. So good morning to us. All right, so how to monetize creativity. So I'm a tech entrepreneur in New York. I'm currently working in a company that I founded. It's called We Are One or WR1, but we sort of say We Are One. It's a creative platform, and it's sort of spun out of all of my experience in my life. So I think that creativity is something that we all have in us. And it's a skill that is becoming increasingly important because in school, everybody sort of is going through the same programs, and creativity is probably, a thing that could sort of differentiate ourselves, in any job, or if you decide to do something for yourself, it's always so important. But what I found is that it's also about sort of listening to the small voices that are going on in your head at all time, small things that you are experiencing and that is sort of grabbing you and maybe sort of lying there for a while until you sort of delete it or sort of follow through with it. And I have always been sort of relying on creativity to sort of in my life for everything I've done, to take me to different paths. So I started very early to monetize my creativity, to put it that way, because I was in a band when I was 13 years old, and we sort of every time we were out playing and stuff, we were sort of handing out, like fan cards and writing autographs, and we always sort of market our own sort of community, our own sort of fan club, and it started building up, slowly, and after a couple of years, we had actually 60,000 members in our fan club, and they all paid us like $20 a year to be part of it, which adds up. It was like $1.2 million, coming in from fans, which was like a crazy sort of stability for our sort of band and our economy. What I found about it is that, the community that you are building around yourself is like the street team. They are so much sort of empowering the community itself. They become friends. They are like-minded, and they all want to be part of that sort of exclusive sort of behind the scenes and be part of something else. The community itself is a huge driving force, I found, early. After that, after sort of I had my artist career, I also, produced some records. And then I went on to start my own record label. I remember at the time I had an apartment. There was like a playground outside, and all the kids were like talking about so cool stuff, like skateboarding and stuff like that. So I found that sort of kids' music was not even relating to what the kids were growing up to. So I went to EMPF that sort of has the Smurf brand and licensed the Smurf and relaunched them, all these Smurf hits albums. That's my fault, but we sold 15 million Smurf albums over Europe, and then went on to sign Bratz and Barbie and Walt Disney over in the US, and sort of became the king of sort of brand related music, which ended up us taking over the FIFA World Cup entertainment program and sort of deciding the official FIFA World Cup songs and the opening ceremony. And so we worked with Shakira and Hips Don't Lie and those songs. So this new company that I started, we wanted to use technology, see how technology could sort of reinvent the whole experience and how creators could monetize it. Sort of we found that there is a gap in the existing platforms out there, like Patreon and others. And the reason for that, I'm going to share just one little screen here, which is currently you have a channel model where the artist is like speaking down to the fans, and it's a very much one way. You know, you have the artist or the creator, and they post something, and then basically you don't have the fan themselves don't have the chance to sort of connect with each other or do fun things or even be part of the experience. So what we want to do is take it over to something called a network model where the creators become just a part of a common community where the fans are the driving force, and basically also they are a part of the content. They can connect with each other, they can build their own teams in their own cities. That is like some of the things that we think that, you know, is needed in the new sort of technology landscape. The current platform forced the creators to work in one way and monetize in one way. But everyone is different, and everyone has sort of different way of working. They have different types of audience. For example, I talked with a rock band that had driven all their fans to Facebook because they want to sort of have that as a platform. And now they had 250,000 fans on Facebook. And they noticed that it was so little response on their post because Facebook wanted them to boost their post to reach their own audience. So they started doing an experience and trying to find out how much do we have to pay to reach our 250,000 fans on Facebook. And they found out that they had to pay $12,000 per post to actually reach their own audience. You know, it's their fan base, but there's a conflict here. So Facebook have their product, they own the users, and now they want to have you to pay to reach those users. So there are actually two products competing on the same platform. As a creator, you just want to reach your audience, but they want to have you to pay for it. It doesn't really, it's not a good model, especially when sort of you have built a base around yourself, and you should be able to sort of do an unfiltered reach to those people. So we beta tested our platform with some bands, and one of the most successful sort of small bands, they had 400 members on their own sort of membership club on the We Are One platform. And they made $160,000 in different products that they were selling there. So why are we doing We Are One? We want to give back the power to creators, but also to the community, so they can be part of it, creating the community and interact. And we want to let creators take back the ownership of their own followers. But also let creators decide how they want to monetize. You know, do you want to do it with subscriptions, sell products like video greetings, digital meet and greets? Do you want to have a tip jar and have a free space? You know, do you want to have monetize your DMs? A lot of people want to, you know, try to do that. Have digital meet and greets where you can sort of snap selfies together or teach something live to a certain person. You can sell NFTs, which are like original art or digital files, or have a course. So on the We Are One platform, we want to sort of try to make a very easy format so that people can try out different ways to monetize their audience, but are not locked into just subscriptions or just something, you know, like that. And finally, also, we want to give control back to the creators on how they want to work and share content. So we make the sharing experience very sort of broad, like you can do live streams, you can schedule out content, you can post it as pay-per-view with, you know, outside of subscriptions, you know, that you have to pay to open one content piece at a time, monetize DMs, send monetized content in DMs, set the expiration date, have polls, you know, audio, video, text, GIFs. You know, there's a lot of ways to share things more, you know, more interesting these days. So there are over 50 million creators in the world. It's the fastest growing small business segment, but less than 0.5% of the creators are currently on a monetization platform. So there's a huge sort of unlocked market here. And we are building, we are one technology to create freedom for the creators.
Sure, that's fascinating to hear about. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so if somebody has some questions, I can also share some screens on how the platform looks and stuff like that.
Well, what I propose is we move to the panel session. We have just under 20 minutes for it, and I'm going to ask Alice and Ioannis and Maria to switch their microphones and screens on. And I'm going to hand over to Alice, who's going to host the panel Q&A session. Alice, all yours.
Thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions in, but I thought I might start with Maria, and then we'll go around to the panel, which has been absolutely fascinating. I guess so for Maria, going back to the program. Do you sort of feel like your program is scalable and for other types of academic and sort of industries? I mean, I know one might argue that data scientists are in such hot demand that that it doesn't necessarily translate over, but what are your thoughts on that?
So I couldn't hear you very well, the key part of the question. Would you mind to repeat?
Yeah, do you think it's scalable?
If it's scalable in terms of beyond data science?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they are new skills that they are part of the delivery of AI, for example, machine learning engineers, etc. And those the same setting doesn't work as well for data science as is that with ML engineers. The reason being is that ML engineers, they work with different platforms with complete different technology. So sometimes it's a little bit not so straightforward as it is for a data scientist, where they apply different techniques regardless of where the data lives. So for data science, the kind of like the recipe that we have works really, really well.
I mean, do you think 8 weeks is enough, sort of empirically?
If it's enough?
8 weeks. So the program is 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Have you found that that's enough, or it should be less or more?
Yeah, definitely. You have to remember that these academics, through their PhD research and in many cases master studies, they've already been exposed to data science. They may be experts on working with big data and on one technique, but what they don't understand very well is how other techniques can be applied in a business. And also what I think, I mean, like the fellows that do mention that the thing that they learn the most is the soft skills and the business skills out of the program. So it looks like 8 weeks work. We've been running it seven years, and they're all employed, 98% of them.
So Ioannis, I mean, this like segues very nicely to your point about acqui-hires, because effectively this is a case in point, right, where the academics are a great source of talent, but not necessarily sort of creating companies that create the products and services. I mean, do you think that the UK can move, and what would it take to just move that onwards in your opinion?
Basically, you need someone to drive the whole process that has the capacity of developing innovation that other companies find very hard to develop. So just need one of these people in in a team of 10 or something, and then you can do it. So it could be one professor.
That could be a founder, as it were, right?
It should be a founder, yes. If you're not a founder, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah, but that is a very different attitude, right? To I'm doing this program, I'm going to be hired by a big corporate. To okay, I'm going to set up.
I've done my time in corporates. I think that there's the landscape right now is that there's a lot of capital. So if you can do something that others cannot, it's a waste of your time, literally, every single moment.
But can you get a hold of capital? It's a very privileged thing, right? Not everybody does have access to the capital.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
I think so.
I definitely agree. Okay. Yeah, definitely believe, yeah. From what I've seen from my...
so Geo, what do you think? I mean, like, you just talked about how creators are like, absolutely booming in terms of, and that's partly because of the lower barriers to entry. The fact that you don't necessarily need a lot of capital, right? To start a band or, you know.
It depends on what you're about to do. If you want to do, for example, nuclear fusion, right? You need a lot of capital. If you want to do, for example, flying airplanes.
The one I was thinking of, but yeah.
Yeah, if you want to do that, so there are in deep tech there are variations. Now in AI, it's the easy part of the deep tech, I would say, because it's an easy entry, the AI, much easier entry anyway than nuclear fusion or I don't know aeroplanes, making electric aeroplanes or whatever else. Whatever doesn't require manufacturing capacity is much easier than things that require manufacturing capacity. Yet there are still people who invest huge amounts of money into fusion, things that require heavy investment. So there is capital right now. So all you need to do is just make sure that you tap on it in the right way. But you need a business plan, you need something, you need also to have a demonstration, someone, at least in your team, that or one or two people that has demonstration, they can have done it before, so because otherwise, or have it already done as part of your PhD or as part of your research as a postdoc or whatever. And then you're gonna move this to the production capacity, which also is another skill set, but you will figure it out eventually.
We do actually have a question about how do we administer the, I'm trying to get this question quite right. So how do we ensure that local capacity is being built? Because technology seems to be far more advanced in the development of human capacity, the soft skills that we just talked about. So, I mean, I know you just said like, oh, you know, people will figure out how to start a business, but I know that in the UK context, you know, we have much fewer repeat sort of entrepreneurs here than in the UK or in the US. So you don't have a lot of people done it before, and some of the suppliers of capital don't really want you to experiment.
Okay, but why don't you pick up a plane then? Who is stopping you?
Well, yes. I mean, if you go to the U.S., but sorry, I'm coming from a UK sort of taxpayer point of view. Like, I want the academics who are here in the UK to stay here, right? So
no, this is not the right way to think about it. I think that if you think about borders whenever you're doing business, it's possibly the wrong way to think about it. And I believe that UK is very close to US, both in terms of mentality and everything. The ecosystem is different because the country is smaller as well. So you have US is 320 million, right? So that's a lot more people than the UK. So accordingly, the sizes of investments and everything changes, and the size of the market access changes, and this also changes a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, a lot of let's say capitalists, venture capitals, angels are looking on the other side of the Atlantic just because there's saturation right now in the US. They can't find people literally to staff the startups. So still, I think there's an opportunity there. If you want to make it in a very, very particular way, that is possibly where you're going to have a problem, because it may not come to your circumstances. So there's more than one way of doing that.
Indeed. I mean, I'm going to stop the conversation because I can see that I think we may just have to agree to disagree on this, because, you know, there is statistics that show that at least in the UK, particularly for the academic sector, like capital is not necessarily that plentiful. But I want to ask a question to Geo as well, because a lot of what Geo's presentation is about empowering creators, including those, you know, where there's relatively low barriers to entry. And we had a question about what your market was in terms of penetration in the global south and Africa, which again is much worse than, you know, for creators in the global south, you know, as opposed to someone in the US and the UK, they're even more disadvantaged.
Yeah, so basically what we did, you know, I took my experience to sort of create the platform itself, and, you know, raised a little sort of seed capital from friends and family in the beginning to build like the first beta test. I reached out to some of my friends and we started testing the platform, and it sort of performed extremely well. Very, very high retention, very high sort of conversion and stuff. And then we actually got sort of acquisition offers starting coming in from, you know, companies like Spotify or SoundCloud. And they were very interested in what we were doing, not only for the performance of the platform, but from sort of rumors in the market, but also from the data that they could sort of overlay their streaming data and things like that. But what we found is that to be able to sort of scale this up to a big platform, we had to go back to the drawing board and automate everything. And that's when sort of a lot of things that happened along the way, which made it possible for us to sort of redesign the entire platform. Now we are building the entire platform, and we'll be ready in December. And when we launch it, it will go global. And we have some distribution partners within different fields. So what we found with creators and how they can monetize, it's not only sort of my background with like music stars, you know, you have people who are great at painting or doing other kind of creative things. So we are going out through partners for, you know, music artists, but we're also going through other types of sort of influencers, YouTubers, and to those people. And then we have a third, you know, layer that are going out to like non-profit organizations that needs to sort of use a member club to fundraise. And what they found with our platform is that, you know, they always had this like cause over here and the contributors over here. And now they could bring it together much closer by having the field staff sharing sort of real authentic progress that is like ongoing, and the community could be part of sort of empowering that and inviting their friends and get rewarded and things like that. When it comes to sort of artificial intelligence part of our platform, it's really experiments that we are doing. For example, using geolocation to tag like everybody who was at a fundraising event, for example, who came there, not only said that they would go, but actually came there. That will make it very easy to sort of automatically reward them digitally by sending them maybe a little sort of NFT for everybody who participated, some kind of like digital art piece, or like a badge or something like that. So we look at the automation in the platform and see what we can do, you know.
No, that sounds fabulous. I mean, you are planning a global platform though, ultimately, yeah?
Obviously, I mean, if you look at Patreon, right, they have 180,000 creators on the platform today, which is nothing compared to the 50 million that consider themselves creators. What I found fascinating about it is that, you know, that's a platform that currently is valued by the market to $4 billion. And it's insane to me, because I mean, a lot of these creators are maybe not sustainable financially by themselves.
Well, I was actually going to bring this up, because you know, for the academic side of things, I mean, the Pareto principle applies to the creative sector in spades. It's not even 80-20. It's more like something like 90% of, for example, Spotify revenues go to something like 10% of the artists that are on it, right?
Probably
and
even
so,
less, yeah.
I think it's even less. I think it's even worse than that, actually. And I was talking to, you know, the Association for Independent Music here in the UK, and it's an issue, right? So, you know, how is I mean, there are millions of creators, but the vast majority of them aren't able to make it pay. So does that, how does your sort of, when we talk about business models and monetization, the issue around the monetization of technology and creativity has been that it's actually channels more of the money and the revenues to a smaller number of creators, not more.
Well, I think that what I found fascinating is that you don't need that big community around yourself to be able to actually make a good living. And the kind of the social media has kind of fooled everybody into believing that you need, you know, all these likes and all these followers. But when it comes to monetization, it's completely different, right? So this band that we had on, they had like 400 members in their fan club, but they were diehard, and they were buying you know, everything they put out, like if it was a new t-shirt or a hoodie or you know, a record or whatever, they were supporting them in so many ways, right? And and they also maybe want to support them with more money than you are locked into a subscription on Patreon. They only offer subscription. Maybe somebody want to donate to their tour, you know, because they need to raise money for renting a bus or whatever. So we just want to open the specter of I can share a little slide about that.
I think we're just, I mean, Neil's probably going to call time on us in about 2 minutes, so please do, Geo. So this is really interesting because it does apply to lots of other fields as well, right? Where the Pareto principle, and certainly in venture capital, you know, it's winner takes all in terms of,
Well, venture capital today is kind of weird in America. It's unless you sort of have built something and proved it yourself, it's kind of they are all looking to sort of be part of something that is already working. So they want to give you the capital when it's already sort of, you don't actually need it almost.
well,
But
yeah.
the way I found that, you know, American sort of VCs and investors are thinking is that a lot of them have this business model that 2% of the check they're writing to a startup, that is like covering their salaries and their office, and you know, it's an expensive, you know, organization, so they need to write very big checks for it to make sense, and maybe like $5-10 million, you know, because it's only 2% to go to their salary. So a lot of startups, what I think maybe are doing wrong these days is that they are going out trying to find an investor to put in like $500,000, $1 million, but maybe they should sort of open their mind to a bigger potential, showing the potential, and then sort of try to go for a bigger check. So it makes sense for a VC fund to
yeah, that's a conversation for another day about how to scale.
Totally, but it was like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's a really good point.
Yeah.
Neil, are we handing over to you now? Are you on mute, Neil?
Sorry, we have another 30 seconds if you want to sort of get very quick closing 10 seconds from each.
No, I just wanted to thank all the panel members for a fascinating conversation because it's really, really interesting. I mean, monetization is where the pointy end, right? Great ideas are wonderful. Solving problems is great, but the trick is how to get people to pay for it. And we've been talking on this in an equitable manner as well. So thank you to all the panelists.